The Syria Labour MP Frank Field, long call for a referendum on our membership of the EU. Welcome to the programme. Is the Prime Minister being ambitious enough?
No, but he is actually trying to follow the Harold Wilson model, which was never to be very specific about what the terms were. So there was this great mystery, and then he came down Mount Sinai and announced he'd got the terms and advocated that we should actually stay in. I think the preliminary stage, before we choose leaders, before we have timetables, is to be clear what the country would like, the guidelines for those negotiations. So we need to set the red and blue lines of what needs to be renegotiated. And some of those are pretty obvious if you read the polls.
But we now know, and to many people it was clear at the time, that in 1975 Harold Wilson came back with very little. Though it was bigged up at the time, but when you read the history books now, people can see there was nothing to it. Is that a danger of happening again?
It is a danger, and it's the one I've just alluded to, in that Harold was not required to spell out before he started the negotiations or renegotiations of what the minimum terms were. Nobody had a clear image of what that was, came back and said, I've got them. Nobody knew what he was asking for in the first place.
Were you surprised when you heard Ken Clarke say there that this attempt to renegotiate our terms of membership will not involve any repatriation? I read out, I'll do it again to you, farming, fishing, free trade, criminal justice, energy, free movement of peoples, immigration, employment law. That according to him, the Prime Minister will be happy for all that to stay with Brussels.
I thought there were two really important things from Ken's interview. One was that he's in denial about where Tory opinion is. I mean, Tory opinion overwhelmingly this time, unlike last time, is for serious renegotiations. And secondly, if that is the remaining in-campaign line, that we're after tweaking the system rather than fundamental reform, then I think they'll find it very difficult to win the referendum campaign. I think we need a campaign which sets out the terms, which we fight for those very, very seriously, and ones which, when we get changes, we can actually commend. And the idea that's now also playing this morning, we'll have another go in 5 years' time. It's like a rerun of Scotland. We ought to go in to successfully renegotiate, but also wishing to remain a member of a much reformed European Union.
We don't know all the details of what the Prime Minister is hoping to get, but it's quite clear what his strategy is. I would suggest, to get your reaction, which is that he's carefully calibrating what he's demanding with Chancellor Merkel of Germany in mind, so that he doesn't ask for more than she's prepared to give.
Well, the crunch will be her. And what she thinks and what she will decide. So we go through this performance of these renegotiations, but when push comes to shove, the person that's going to decide whether we remain in on the terms that we wish for renegotiation will be Mrs. Merkel. She'll then have the not that difficult choice. Does she want us out of the Union? With largely surrounded by budget denials from her colleagues, the deficit denial group, or does she want us in with the lines that we take on proven finance?
Isn't it true that the Eurosceptics are bound to be disappointed with what the Prime Minister comes back? That what a lot of people, maybe including yourself, they fundamentally want a common market arrangement. They want a free trade arrangement without the political union part of it, and that is simply not going to be on offer at this referendum.
Well, the Prime Minister's already got movement from Mrs. Merkel beyond what the clever Dick said that he would get. So I don't think we should actually close down on the options. But I would have thought if we are drawing up those red and blue lines, one is going to be temporarily to control our borders. We can't have the extent of the movement of free labour that we've had since 1997. The estimate already is, unless he brings the total down, that we'll have another 3 million added to our population over the next 5 years. That's 3 Birminghams, partly made up, half of it made up, because at the current rate of immigration, half made up from those who were newcomers with the formation of their families.
I understand the case, Frank Field, but I would just to be practical here, if you look at what's coming out of Warsaw, or Berlin, or Rome, or Paris, or Madrid, nobody is prepared to go down that road.
But nobody has actually been faced that with serious negotiations of one side saying these are the red and blue lines. If we can't meet them, we don't think we will win the referenda vote with the British people.
But my understanding
Therefore,
is that Mr. Cameron's not even asking for this.
No, but I think part of the preliminary part of the campaign is about making sure that the country guides the Prime Minister on what these minimum terms are. And it's certainly going to be about temporarily limiting free movement. It's certainly going to be that what's the position of those of us who do not want increasing political and economic union in the EU, and to what extent will this cartel of trading nations called the EU be much more open about trading with developing countries, which is far more important than the aid that we might actually give them.
May I ask you this? If there is no change to the free movement of people's provision, and if there are no major powers repatriated, as Ken Clarke was suggesting, how would you vote?
Oh, on that, I'm wanting to go in to make these negotiations successful.
Right, but on
If not, then I think, won't matter what I do, I would actually campaign that we should actually refuse. But I think the country will be in that position. No. Yes.
And you think the country would be like-minded?
Yes, I do. But that's the view he's got to get over in Europe, that he might be doing this soft shoe shuffle with the other leaders, but at the end of the day, he's got to come back and sell this deal. And I don't think, as you've described it this morning, or as Ken Clarke, I think slightly unfairly described it, because that Bloomberg speech was the Prime Minister's first attempt to begin to lay down terms. He has actually moved already. I think we should encourage that movement.
If you are disappointed by what the Prime Minister is prepared to, or able to bring back, and so therefore you join the Out campaign, who should lead the Out campaign?
I think the answer is the same that Ken was hinting at. If this is going to engage the country and actually have authority afterwards, I think we want to see the leadership going to those people who were too young to have a vote last time.
So not Nigel Farage?
That would, or Ken or I, we might want to be active, but I think the future is owned by much younger people than us.
So this is a young people's referendum. Like Ken Clarke, you're not going to give me a name, I assume?
No, I think one of the reasons why we need this preliminary stage of drawing up the red and blue lines, it would actually help the Prime Minister's hand in thinking, well, that's what I'm starting for, but it will allow younger people who may not be in Parliament to emerge as the natural leaders on both sides.
We shall look to see who they are. Frank.
You didn't frankly have the balls to put country before party.